This is Whiskey Whereabouts. I'm Tim, and this is the 8-year Cask Strength Kilkerran from Springbank sister distillery that is matured entirely in the Bourbon Cask. It's a big step up on the ABV from the normal core range release, but is it going to be missing something? Are the sherry casks part of the secret sauce?
My whiskey journey has taken me to Scotland and back. I've explored whiskey education, tastings, and distilleries from Islay to Speyside. And now my journey continues here, with you, on Whiskey Whereabouts.
So these are batch release, and there's fully bourbon matured and fully sherry matured versions of this 8-year cask strength. Here we have the bourbon matured. It's 55.6% ABV Kilkerran. I'm going to get straight into it because I've been on a journey with this whiskey, which is not super readily available here in the U.S. A little bit harder to come by here, and I have had a big sort of difference I perceived in the whiskey since that initial pour. This whiskey has been open for a while now. I would say about 3 weeks. And going in on the nose, neat. It's very Campbeltown, right? It's got that funkiness. It has a sour kind of fruit. There's a subtle smoke. It's down at the bottom. I've had this sort of open up. When I first poured it, it was too hot. It came off a little hot on the nose, and that has really dissipated. It's been open long enough, but not a huge, amount of time to open this pour up. It's more about opening the bottle up here, getting a couple pours out of it. And the other thing is that some of the flavors that were really separated out have kind of combined in a kind of a nice way. So I had some berry sort of sweetness. I had almost some lactic. I had a lot of vanilla, as you can imagine. Now I've almost got like a baked kind of raspberry cheesecake element sitting on top of this undeniable. It's funky. It's so Campbelltowny. It's very bordering on overripe, along with this sort of sour fruit element. There's a vanilla caramel center in this nose, like holding it together at the middle. But there is some more exotic stuff. There's some nice fruit. There's some orchard fruit on top of what I was talking about, that berry sort of cheesecake, graham cracker crust. It's got the apple sort of pear orchard fruit element. There's like a tea element, not like an iced tea, nothing sweet, like a tea. And there's almost this sort of dusty old kind of library book kind of element at the bottom of it. So coming on strong with that sort of trademark funkiness. So going in on the palate now, neat. There's certainly a vanilla cream element as part of the palate. There's a bit of cask oak, sort of little tannic. There's black pepper. There's almost a peppermint. I'm getting orange fruit now, more so than the orchard fruit and the berry on the palate. And the way the smoke is coming in, it's a pretty solid but not roaring kind of fire smoke. It's filling, your mouth. It's tickling the sinus. It's not quite ashy. It's not quite condensed on the palate. Going in on the finish now. Yeah, I found that this one needs some time in the glass. I've dipped into it a few times here and there, checking in with it before I'm ready to do my review. And, you just pour it and sit and take a first sip. It is a little too sour. It needs to sit in a glass. And when it sits in the glass for, 10 minutes or whatever, then the sweetness opens up. So it balances nicely. I will say that the finish is probably not my favorite stage of this whiskey. The nose has so much going on at this point, and all those sort of exotic kind of Campbelltown flavors, and it's not, to me, out of balance. And the finish seems like a medium finish. It has sort of a wave of the big flavors, and then there's a second, as it develops and plays out, there's this sort of second wave, and it kind of keeps going. But what is dominating in there is the cask bitter, a bit of the ash, and some of that really sour fruit. And they're not, without something to balance them out, my favorite flavor notes coming out of this whiskey. But there's more to the finish. In that first wave I'm describing, you got a nice plume of smoke and a lot of ash, much more so than the earlier stages across the tongue. Another plume of that really overripe, funky earthiness announcing itself, sort of signing off. That note gets played as that finish really starts to develop. Underneath, you've got, it's a honey sweet, but there's a vanilla sort of undercurrent. There is, I would say almost a leatheriness to it. But again, as it plays out, you're left with a lot of the ash, a lot of the cask, some of that sour. There's some sweetness there too, but not my favorite individual notes without something to sort of balance them out. It's not a bad finish. It's not that it's not sort of inviting to go back to. It's just not perfect, and it doesn't have as much complexity as maybe the nose had. But we've got cask strength whiskey here. We're going to see what other notes that we can find. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of this water. Okay, so if you don't love, you probably should buy this whiskey, but if you don't love that sort of Campbeltown-y kind of funkiness element, it hasn't destroyed it with the water. It's just turned the volume down on it a little bit. It's really fruit forward now. I'm getting this sort of apple. I'm getting some of that, like that fresher kind of cut grass element. It's really cleaned it up a little bit. It hasn't sort of eliminated completely the concept of some smoke or some of that element, but it's really, really subtle. It's really down in the mix. And so this has turned it into certainly a more approachable whiskey, but probably a little bit more basic, a little bit more average whiskey. Yeah, as you sit with it, you're getting more. It's fighting back. I'm getting a little bit more of that funkiness. But yeah, that deep down in it, that tea leaf element is still there, giving it a nice little balance. So let's check out the palate now with the water. Yeah, it's really muted here. Pretty vanilla in the literal sense and in the figurative sense. Ash, little cask. It's still creamy, mouthfeel-wise. It's a lot simpler. There's a little bit of the smoke at the margins, which you have to kind of look for at notes there. Going in on the finish. Plume of that smoke, some of that funky kind of earthiness, cinnamon now. Apple. I would say what the water has done is really failed to unlock anything new, which is nice because we're not missing anything out neat, but it absolutely will make this whiskey more approachable. It makes it more ordinary or traditional, in which case, why would you buy this whiskey if that's what you're going for? So I don't really think that the water really serves any purpose here. But before I give this whiskey a rating, I want to go ahead and compare it to the core range whiskey here. I've got the 12-year, 46%, 70% bourbon, 30% on the sherry. I'm going to get a fresh pour of without the water on this, and then just to compare and just to see what the difference makes with the absence of the sherry. Going back to the old sort of 12-year here. What a difference! What a difference! This happens a lot of times when I do these comparisons with the same whiskey from the same distillery, and one of them, it has none of the other casks. So much sherry now, right? It's just jumping out at me. This is pretty approachable and pretty sweet on the nose, versus so much of that sour fruit and that sort of funky kind of earthy that I'm getting off of this one. It's almost non-existent by comparison. And if you know this whiskey, then that tells you how turned up this might be over here. But yeah, underneath that sort of sherry sweet and a wave of vanilla, you've got a subtle earthiness. More of that sort of leatheriness and a citrus, it's almost cleaner, right? Citrus, kind of polished leather element on the palate. That Campbeltown, Kilkerran-y kind of element. It's in there, but it's really wrapped up in a really nice shell of approachable, kind of traditional sort of vanilla and sherry notes. Whereas here, it's kind of turned way up between the ABV and only the bourbon casks. When we come back from one to the other, it's really on that finish, which just stays with you with all of those just slightly more sharper, some a bit pungent kind of notes. This is very good, and it's nicely balanced, and it's, you know, it's an approachable whiskey. I can definitely see some folks being put off by this whiskey, but it's robust, and I really like how many different kind of elements are in play here. I also haven't talked much about heat. It's very sippable. It really, for the ABV here, it's a pretty sippable, and I wouldn't call it approachable. It's a little bit challenging, and it's throwing some curveballs at you. But neat, I think it's pretty balanced. Again, I don't love that finish. So I'm going to say 4 1/4 glasses. So let's talk about value. And I paid $120 for my bottle. And it's really hard to get here in the U.S. And it is, your price may vary, but at $120, you know, that's what I expect to pay for Corey Vrecken, which I love, but it's not age-stated whiskey. Most is $100, just over $100, sort of cask strength peated whiskeys that we think of are $100, closer to $100, but without age statements. And so I'm not going to penalize it. I'm going to leave it at the same final rating, 4 1/4 glasses. It's certainly not a bargain. Have you had this one? Do you prefer this one to the sherry? Let us know in the comments how you feel about what is a much-loved Distillery's cask strength age-stated offering. And make sure you hit the subscribe button right over here so you don't miss any of the future videos coming. And I will see you on the next one.